Yeah.
Okay. All right.
Yeah.
So,
Give it a few.
okay, no. It's up now. Yeah, I always have to wait
Okay,
because
great.
I have the little bug. So I'm going to let you and you all can say hello to the pastor, and then I'm going to let you all go.
Hello.
Good
Hey, Reverend
morning.
Gary. Have a great show.
Thank you, hon.
Yeah.
Thank you. Thank you.
Have a good one.
Okay.
Have a good one. Hi.
Okay. Hey. How you doing, Pastor Todd?
I'm doing well. How are you?
I am doing well. Doing well. Doing well. Doing well. Doing
Good.
well.
Good.
Doing well. Doing well. Doing well. Reverend is up in Minneapolis, as I'm sure you know.
Mm-hmm.
So, of course, the Daily Mail is making something of of uh, Maxine Waters telling these folks to, get more confrontational. Oh, Maxine Waters. But people don't know she's from a sundown town. You know,
Mm-hmm.
just
St.
outside
Louis.
of St. Louis. Just
Yep.
outside of St. Louis. She's from where they
Mm-hmm.
killed Michael Brown, right? So she has
Mm-hmm.
seen some things, y'all. I mean, she comes out of essentially the deep Jim Crow South, because that's when you leave Chicago, that's what you're in, and it's a deep thing. It's a deep thing. So she sees something that a lot of people just do not see. So okay, but everybody, because I'm coming up on Facebook now and on YouTube, we're going to be interviewing Dante Wright's brother, Demick Bryant, in the second hour. Can't wait to hear him. It makes the story very human, right, Pastor Yuri? I mean, this is beyond the hashtag. These people have lost. He's lost a brother. His parents have lost a son, and Dante's son has lost a dad. There are so many things that he's not going to be able to do with his child. And I want to talk about that today. I want to make it real for everybody. We need to think about that when you kill people, you kill a lot of dreams. Kill a lot. You know, I mean, Reverend Yuri, I can't help but think of the picture. It's iconic now. It's a photo of Bernice King in her mother's arms at her father's funeral,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
and you see her just kind of crouched in the seat, and that never fails to haunt me, quite frankly, just to see, and just knowing them and knowing how painful it has been for them. You know, it's just grief, and it is what it is wherever you go. So we're going to be talking with him, but we're also going to talk about this finding that there have been an average of 3 police killings, Pastor Yuri. Read this in the New York Times just a few days ago. Uh, Between March 29th and April 17th or 16th, 3 police killings of Americans every day, 64. So there's something going on, right? Something is going on.
Mm-hmm.
So we'll talk about that. And in the context of now, we're all waiting on pins and needles.
60 seconds.
Thank you. To see what this uh, trial, what these arguments are going to yield today. So can't wait to talk about that. And I'm so glad we're going to get good news from you, because we love kicking off our week with you, Pastor Yuri, because you are just so fantastic.
I'm glad to do it. Thank you.
No, thank you. Thank you. And so I'm up here on Facebook now. Okay. So let me do that. Let me pull this over here. And now I can get on up.
10 seconds.
Great. Thank you, Devin. Everybody, God bless us, and let's have a great show.
We can change the world, change the world, change the world. We can change the world, we can change the world, change the world. We can do it. From a place of pain, war, and hate to a place of love, it's not too late. Gotta save the children, we can't wait. Let's change the world. I am breathing.
Hey, everybody. Oh, I love it. That's right. I'm testing out these songs from the Sounds of Blackness. Let me know how you feel about that. That kind of fits what we're trying to do on the Santita Jackson Show. Hey, everybody. Santita Jackson. It is Monday, April 19th, 2021. It is a pleasure. What a blessing to be with you once again. I'm so glad that God took me through the weekend and brought me here to be with you today. Call us at 773-763-WCPT. Of course, I'm at WCPT 820, the nation's largest progressive talk radio station, and AM 950 radio, the largest progressive talk radio station in Minneapolis, St. Paul, actually in Minnesota. It's the voice of progressive Minnesota. We are on pins and needles. Today, we will hear the defense and the prosecution present their closing arguments in the Derek Chauvin murder trial. Who killed George Floyd? What was responsible for his death? Was it the knee or was it something else? We're going to hear about that. And today we have a special guest. We're going to be talking with the brother of Daunte Wright, his brother Dimmick Bryant, who proudly said, "I'm his big brother." Wow. Can't wait to talk with him about what justice and accountability will look like to him, and just where his family, how they are. Reverend Jesse Jackson was with them just yesterday with his mother and father, and there was yet another march in Minneapolis, St. Paul, and in Brooklyn Center, and many people are saying that those cities, look like fortresses, as does Kimberly Potter's home, the officer who said, "Taser, taser, taser, oh blank, I shot him." Wow. Do you believe what she said or what she did? Something to talk about. I saw that in a fabulous, fabulous piece this weekend. So I want you to call me at 773-763-WCPT, 773-763-WCPT, 9278. I want you to call me. What are you expecting to hear? What would you need to hear? Because there are some people, and I hear them, because of course I do the Keep Hope Alive with Reverend Jesse Jackson radio show over the weekend, and here, and I get messages. There is a body of people who do believe that either Derek Chauvin didn't mean it, there was something else going on in terms of George Floyd's health, that it wasn't quite Derek Chauvin's fault. There is reasonable doubt with some people. So I want to know what you're thinking today. So let me say hello to Medi and Marnie and Chapearl and Brian and Yolanda Tolson, and we're going to be talking with Jamie Calvin of the Invisible Institute. He is responsible for bringing us the Laquan McDonald case. And I want to know what his response to this report from the New York Times. It says that since March 29th until at least April 16th, on average, 3 Americans were shot and killed by police every day. 64. Half of them, more than half of them, Black, male, and Latino. What does that mean? Oh, so much to talk about on the Santita Jackson Show. So let's get right to these headlines. Chicago, we're going to have a high of 50 degrees and showers. Minneapolis, St. Paul, a high of 41 degrees and cloudy. Boy, we had some fun in the major leagues with baseball. The Cubs, well, not so much. Atlanta beat them 13-4. Oh my gosh. And the White Sox, well, they were triumphant over the Red Sox 5-1. Today they'll be facing off against the Red Sox once again, and the Twins will be playing the A's tomorrow. Everybody, let's look at just a few of these headlines. Well, we are looking at the Chauvin trial. What is going to happen, everybody? What will the defense and prosecution say? That is what everyone is trying to find out. And that is coming against the backdrop of these harrowing, heartbreaking mass shootings. 3 people were killed and 3 were injured at a Kenosha, Wisconsin tavern, for example. A person of interest has been located and is facing a charge. But guess what, everybody? The U.S. has recorded at least 50 mass shootings since the Atlanta area spa shootings on March 16th, which left 8 people dead. Wow, what is going on in America? And with COVID-19. All Americans 16 years or older are now eligible for the COVID-19 vaccines. The White House recently moved up its blanket eligibility date from May 1st and is now embarking on a media blitz to get more shots in arms. Indeed, you saw President Obama and President Biden join forces to particularly appeal to people of color, Black people in particular, and Latinos to get these shots. I'm wondering, should they also appeal to white male Republicans? They're the ones who are the most hesitant. Wow. But there's still a long way to go, they say, to achieve herd immunity and vanquish the growing threat of coronavirus variants. Now, so what do you think about that, everybody? Talk to me. I want to hear from you. 773-763-WCPT, 773-763-9278. Dr. Fauci was making the media rounds this weekend, and he said that Republican vaccine deniers are hurting efforts to lift COVID restrictions. He says they are actively working against efforts to lift the very coronavirus restrictions that they insist are an infringement upon our civil liberties. What do you think about that? He was in a fiery exchange last Thursday with Republican Congressman from Ohio, Jim Jordan. And his response was this: the fact that one may not want to get vaccinated, in this case is a disturbingly large population of Republicans, only actually works against where they want to be. It's very interesting, though, because as we're watching the vaccination rates rise, we're also watching the COVID-19 rates rise. So we want to speak with Dr. Deborah Furr-Holden about that, because there is a lot going on. A lot of people have a lot of questions. And then a lot of people's lives have been spared because of these shots. So we'll see. We'll see, everybody. Minneapolis is bracing for unrest as a Derek Chauvin trial enters its final phase. That is the deliberation phase. Now, these jurors will actually be sequestered. They have not been sequestered the whole time. So what do you think about that? More and more people protesting all across the country. Indeed, Maxine Waters, Auntie Maxine, the Congresswoman, the firebrand from California, was there this past weekend in Minneapolis, St. Paul, and in Brooklyn Center. And she said, you know what? The Black Lives Matter protesters have got to get more confrontational. We've got to stay in the streets to get some justice. Wow. So what do you think about that? She's talking to the people, everybody. Have you heard about these DigiDogs, the robotic canines that they're using, that the New York Police Department are using, and more police departments are going to be using them around the country? Well, U.S. Congressman Jamal Bowman, one of these freshman progressives, has joined his colleague and fellow squad member, Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, in condemning the NYPD's use of Boston Dynamics Spot robotic dog. How is that going to work? On Friday, he added his voice to this growing public outrage, especially because they're going to be deployed in neighborhoods of color. He said they got military gear, quote, and now they got robot dogs in the streets oppressing us. It's crazy. We need to end that. Can you imagine a robot dog? How do you stop a robot dog from attacking you? And what about the Tesla car? A lot of people love these Teslas. They're really beautiful cars, but there was a massive crash this past weekend. Massive crash. And there was no driver behind the wheel, because many of them, they can be driverless, everybody. Crashed into a tree. And two men aged 59 and 69 died. Neither was behind the wheel, and it took hours to calm down the fire. Whew. Reverend Dr. Yeary, it's a strange new world in which we find ourselves. But you know what? I know you're going to bring us some good news today. How you doing?
I'm well, Santita. It is a different world where we come from. We had it from the show that inspired so many of us in a particular generation. But we, as you said, we made it through the weekend. Driverless cars. Not quite ready for that, but that's just me. Yeah. No.
I had to give that to you. I thought you would.
Look, hey, if you put the steering wheel in the car, I come from somebody needs to touch it. Please touch it, hold it, use it, master it, please. It's good. It's good for the emotional stability of all involved. Otherwise, the last time I got on a driverless car, it was called a roller coaster. Y'all talk back to me. So anyway,
Yes.
we'll keep working through it. But good morning, Chicago. Good morning, Twin Cities, Minneapolis, St. Paul. Hey, y'all. Time to get up. Time to get moving. It's Monday morning. Time to get started. I know that bed's so warm, you don't want to let it go, but don't push that snooze again. You got some living to do. Get up. Put your feet on the floor. Feel the cool reminder of the tile of the carpet coming back your way, that you're still alive. Take a deep breath. Take a deep breath of life. Get that morning beverage, that Joe, that tea, whatever you need, that OJ, orange juice. Get it going. Let's go. We got to get to living. Let's talk some more. Last week I talked to you about it's time to change the game. Or just go back real quick. Remember, I told you two things. One, you got to stick to your story. Remember who you are. Don't ever lose sight of your journey to this point, because it will fuel you for how you move forward. And then I told you to watch your mouth. Remember that? Don't adopt negative conversation about yourself. Stick to the script that you are on your way to accomplish great things, and there's greatness inside of you. Now, having pushed the reset button, let's kind of move forward. There are a couple of things I want to say to you this morning. I want you to remember what causes us to react and respond, because the brain is really, really peculiar. It helps us to filter out things that tend to be counter to our ability to survive and thrive. And that's basically being able to navigate in images, in pictures, rather than words. And I've talked to you before. Kids are just ingenious. They know how to use their imaginations in some compelling ways. And I want you to do that too. I need you to visualize where you're going. Picture your destination so that when the words don't align, you can filter them out. Navigate off of a good picture. Remember, I told you the story about putting the picture of my graduation robe next to the computer to inspire me while I was writing. Where are you going? It's like going to a vacation. No one invites you to a wonderful vacation without giving you pictures. No one's going to send you a whole lot of words. They want you to be able to see yourself in the place you want to be. And that's what I'm saying to you. See yourself in where you're going. Don't get trapped in where you are. Keep moving, but it starts with a good picture. Paint a good picture for yourself. The second thing is this. Remember that fear can be treacherous. Everybody's holding their breath. The nation's watching what's happening in Minneapolis. We're hearing all of these issues, not only about police violence, but communities that are in upheaval. As Reverend Jackson would often say, jobs out, guns in. That's always a particular issue. But I want to make sure that we stay grounded. Don't get intimidated by tough circumstances. What am I saying to you? Reverend Jackson often says, the mat is no place for a champion. It's time to get back up. But don't be afraid to fail. Put your best foot forward and recognize that everything is not always going to be successful, but it is always meaningful. Even our setbacks have value. And what I'm saying to you is that the thing that you need most is not courage, but here it is, gratitude. Be grateful for the fact that you're still here and you're still engaged and you're still winning and you're still in the fight and you're still pursuing, and your enemies did not get the best of you. Your failure did not trap you. Gratitude stops fear. So what I want you to get started, I need you to take a moment of gratitude. I need you to run to a well-lit room, a big clear mirror, a bright clear glass, and I need you to pause and take a look at the only thing you will ever need to know, that God does awesome things, and it starts with looking at your reflection. When you pay attention to who you are, how you were created, the hairs on your head, the color, the texture of your skin, the color of your eyes, all of that is a reminder that the only evidence you will ever need that God is up to something good starts with appreciating this fact, that God made you. So on today, paint the picture, but don't be afraid. Be grateful, because I promise you, you're well on your way to changing the world. That's my good news for you. Go do what you do best. Be the best you can be. And I'm cheering for you. And we'll talk soon.
Pastor Todd Yeary, Reverend Dr. S. Todd Yeary. Oh boy, what an anointing. Thank you so much. You know what? Maybe that graduation robe, that dress, those pants, uh, just a picture that that board where you can see, even if you have not been there yet. See it, be it. I love it. I love it. I needed that word this morning. Pastor Todd Urey. We've got Dr. Deborah Fur Holden talking to us today, giving us this COVID-19 update. I'm going to continue to expand it so that we can talk about our healthfulness, because that is really the key. But you're right up there in Michigan where you're experiencing a surge. And we saw Dr. Fauci making his rounds this weekend, Dr. Deb, as he's encouraging people to get vaccinated so that we can get back to some semblance of normal. And we saw President Obama, come out, and he's really making a push in the Black community in particular, in the Latino community. Look, get vaccinated. And yet we're seeing Chile is one of the most vaccinated places on earth, and we're seeing a surge. What's going on? Is there something we're not doing, or is it the variants?
No, it's a couple things. There's a lot that we're not doing. And good morning.
Good morning.
The first thing The first thing I remind people of is we originally flattened the curve in this country in the absence of a vaccine.
How did we do that?
Okay, that was good old-fashioned prevention and public health. That was just good prevention and public health. We did a very good job at some point of getting the message to people on what they needed to do to keep themselves protected, and then we had governmental support for people to be able to honor those things. So we told people, wear masks and, wash your hands and many of these things. That fell on deaf ears for people in prisons. Most prisons you have to pay for soap. Shelter in place. That fell on deaf ears for many people who couldn't afford to just switch their job over to Zoom and do what they normally did, moving out and about in the world, to be able to do it from home. But boy, did enhanced unemployment and payroll protection, really become a game changer for people to be able to do that. We did things like issue stay of eviction. So if people had an inability to pay rent, they weren't put out on the street. We had all of these things happening at the same time that were both in the world of personal responsibility as well as shared and governmental responsibility. Those things all coming together is how we flattened the curve. And then what you start to see was bit by bit, those layers started to fall apart. Some states reopened. Some states reopened fully, some partially. Some of that governmental support went away. You still got people out here waiting for their stimmies, right?
Yes. Did you say a stimmy? Thank you.
They call them the stimmies. They're waiting on their stimmies. And so that's what they call them. It's hilarious. So we don't have all of those things happening at the same time. And then I do honestly believe the vaccine has been a false dose of hope for people. It is a dose of hope, but we're not going to be able to solely and singularly vaccinate our way out of this problem. And so I think what has happened is you've got a lot of things, working against us that have happened at the same time. The variants emerging. We've had some, unseasonably warm days since January that have, prompted large gatherings and people moving out and about. We had a lapse in that governmental support in between the changing of administrations. And so a lot of those vital supports that allow people to shelter in place, to stay at home, some of those things were temporarily down. And so all of those things happen at the same time, I think, have us be where we are. But we can turn the tides because we know what to do. So it doesn't make sense. If you've got something that's working, you work that. The vaccine was supposed to be the icing on the cake. It was supposed to be the thing that tipped the scales all the way in our favor.
But you know what? But Dr. Deb, everybody didn't say that. You remember Kenneth Frazier, the CEO of Merck, said that we were not being square with the American people by making the vaccine the silver bullet. He said that is not what it's going to be. It's going to take, he said what you said. He has a Swiss cheese approach. He says we need different layers. I'm just going back to, you and I've talked about this. I'm going back to what he said, and I'm going back to what you have been saying now for a long time, that it takes a lot of different things. And that's why I don't want you to feel like you're a broken record. When you said, Santita, I've been saying this forever, but I'm like, girl, people getting vaccinated and they're going out and they are partying. And then people would feel, once they've had COVID and they've recovered, they feel I've got antibodies, so I don't need a mask, or I can wear the mask in a haphazard way. I've seen that too. I've got 2 minutes. They belong to you.
Yeah, well, I'll tell you, there are plenty of countries where they've got variants. Plenty of countries where they have variants. If people would honor the protocols and we can continue to move forward with safe vaccines and also the therapeutics, we can come out on the other side of this. You cannot, it's like this. If you have a toaster and that toaster is making you the best toast every day, and then you unplug that toaster from the wall, when you put the bread in, nothing's going to happen. You don't unplug from things that are sourceful. You don't stop doing the things that are working and expect things to keep going well.
And the bread's going to go bad, you guys.
Yeah, right? It might get crunchy, but not toasty. It just get old and stale. And that's what we've done. We've unplugged the toaster from the wall, and we're wondering why things aren't working. Well, we stopped doing the things that were working.
We traded it off, right?
Yeah.
It's like, okay, I got vaccinated, so I can. Or the vaccine is here, so I can. Yeah. Oh, wow. 30 seconds. They're yours.
Yeah, so if people want to live their best life, yes, I encourage people. Do the work, get the vaccine that's available to you, but continue to honor these other things. If everybody does that, we could potentially have a very different mid-late summer than the one that we are predictably on course for now. But that's going to require a lot, individually and shared, and from our government.
Wow, Dr. Deborah Holden, keeping us abreast of where we need to be, where we need to be going. Don't unplug that toaster from the electrical outlet, everybody. You still have to practice your protocols. Wash your hands, mask, gargle with some Listerine. Goodness gracious. We've got to take care of ourselves, everybody. Coming up, we're going to talk about the fact that there are so many police killings that are happening in America just right after this trial. I mean, since March 29th, an average of 3 persons per day have been killed by the police. What is going on, everybody? Back in just a minute. Dr. Deb?
Yes, ma'am.
You were brilliant. We need to talk a little bit later.
Okay, sure.
I have an idea, but I've got to do some stuff about this trial. You know how that is. So I got to run off the air and oh man, this is a lot. But can you believe they've been killing all these people every day since the trial, the day before the trial began? 3 people per day.
That's just
it's crazy.
Mind blowing. Yeah.
It is crazy, and they're more than half of them have been Black and Latinx men. Oh yeah. I mean, it's when you see it, it's just the numbers are just astonishing, and of course Minneapolis is on, and Brooklyn Center are on lockdown essentially. Reverend's up there right now.
Yeah.
So it's a lot. It's a lot, but they have been shooting people left and right and left. So I'm
sending Jamie through.
I'm going to call you back a little bit later, okay, sweetie?
All right, my dear. Have a great show.
Oh, I love you. And give my babies some love for me. Since you're getting closer
to
becoming a grandma. Oh.
I'm getting close.
You're going to be so crazy as a grandmother. You are going to be nuts. You're going to leave your children behind. It's crazy. That's what you all do.
I'm with Joyce Pearl in the Crazy Grandma Club.
Look, I saw
Over the moon.
I saw my parents
that
do
little boy so much. Yeah. Yeah.
I saw my parents do it. Oh, my mother said, we've done everything we can for you. Now it's about the grandchildren.
Yeah.
I said, oh, wow. Okay.
Yeah.
All right. You're coming. I
I
see it.
love it.
Oh, I see it. I see
Yeah.
it. She said, "No more goodies for you." Next. Okay. Oh, bless your heart.
Yeah.
Love you so much, girl.
Okay.
Thank you, sweetie. Jamie Calvin, how are you?
I'm good. Good morning.
Oh, it is so good hearing your voice today with all the work that you have done. And we're on Facebook Live for now, but we are going to be up in a minute. And so, pivoting hard off of this article, but also off of all the work that you've been doing. And I have to, and of course, I have to find out what you're going to be doing next because I didn't realize that you men like you never retire. I don't know what you're going to do next, but I said, I can't imagine an invisible
Yeah.
institute without our Jamie. What?
I'm not leaving. I'm not leaving. I'm stepping down as executive director
Okay.
so that I can put all my energy into the investigations and reporting work. I'll remain full time. I'll be part of the team. As we've grown, the administrative responsibilities have sort of displaced the kind of reporting that I do. And I think there are other people who can do the administrative stuff as well or better than I do. And so I want to be putting all my energy into the reporting.
Well, you're making me feel better now. So I'm like,
60.
Okay, yeah, I'm not going anywhere.
I said, wait a minute. I meant to ask you that last night. I said, oh, this is not right.
Oh yeah.
Okay. Here we're coming up, everybody. Call me 773 WCPT. Let's talk about these police shootings. Oh. Okay. Okay. All right. Okay.
10.
Hey, everybody. Welcome back to the Santita Jackson Show. We're going to be talking with Dante Wright's brother at the top of the hour, Demick Bryant. What has it been like for his family, and what are they seeking? They want not just justice, they said they want accountability. There's a lot that's going to go into that. Going to have a magnificent panel surrounding him, but we want to hear from you about this because we are all on pins and needles as we await the defense and the prosecution's arguments, their final arguments before the jurors go into sequestration and before they deliberate about this particular case. But I came across this interesting article just a couple of days in the New York Times, and I just thought that I want to hear from you. What are you thinking about it? Since testimony began, the article goes. On March 29th, at least 64 people have died at the hands of law enforcement nationwide, with Black and Latino people representing more than half of the dead. As of Saturday, the average was more than 3 killings a day. Now, this comes from the New York Times, everybody, from gun violence databases, news media accounts, and law enforcement releases. And they offer a snapshot, the article says, of policing in America in this moment. But is it just in this moment? I said, let me go to Jamie Calvin. You know Jamie Calvin of the Invisible Institute. He is responsible. He's the reporter who broke the story of Laquan McDonald. He doggedly pursued the tapes, and he completely changed the city, quite frankly, his reporting. And so we want to thank him for all of the work that he has done and that he continues to do. I want to ask him about this report and what he's seeing. Jamie Calvin, welcome back to the show. Always a joy to hear your voice.
It's so good to be with you.
Talk to me. What about 3 persons per day killed? They've died at the hands of law enforcement nationwide. And the New York Times is reporting this as something that we've never seen before. Do you agree with that?
I agree that it's something we've never seen before, but that doesn't mean it hasn't been occurring before. These statistics have been consistent and flat over the years. This is the level of state violence. Now, I think it's important to recognize that some of those shootings will have been justified. If we knew the particular circumstances of the particular case. And I don't think we want to go from one extreme of years ago of assuming that any police shooting was justified to assuming that any police shooting is murder. But it's shocking, it's disturbing. You noted the racial proportions in the shootings, that this is violence that is mostly inflicted on Black and brown communities. And I should also emphasize that that the time statistics are about killings. I just use the word shootings. I mean that they don't reflect the number of police shootings or extreme excessive force of other sorts that have been inflicted on people. So this is, my organization is called the Invisible Institute, and we're investigative reporters, and we're often seen as exposing things that have been hidden. I think this is an instance of something that has been in plain sight, and until this era in American life, we haven't seen it clearly, and now it's coming into focus.
When you say it's in plain sight, what do you mean?
I mean that we have a kind of apartheid justice system in America where law enforcement behaves very differently in low-income Black and Hispanic communities than it does generally, and that's related to segregation. It's related to a very ugly history, and we've looked past that. We've looked past it, and I think that part of what's we're talking about the George Floyd trial, and it'll be on everybody's minds. And we went through, as you know, in Chicago, the extended trial of Officer Jason Van Dyke, who was ultimately convicted of murder of 17-year-old Laquan McDonald. I think it's very, very important to focus on these individual cases and the responsibility of individual officers for these atrocities. At the same time, what we're really dealing with, and I think it's coming into focus now in our current public debates about this, is a mode of policing that will keep producing these results until we change that kind of policing. And so, we focus often on the individual officer as racist or as having had a history of abusive behavior. We could expel all active racists from law enforcement and still have these outcomes if we don't change the way in which Black and Hispanic communities are policed. We keep they talk about the split second, and often, almost always, when civilians are killed by law enforcement, a police executive will get up and say, "But this was a tragedy, but you must understand that police officers have to make split-second decisions whether to use lethal force." I think that's the wrong conception. I think we have a kind of policing that keeps manufacturing the split second. Think about all the different instances across the country, the famous cases. Eric Gardner, a man selling loose cigarettes on the street. Tamir Rice, a little boy playing with a toy gun in a playground. Laquan McDonald, a kid kind of disassociated wandering around the city at night, on and on and on. Broken tail lights, air freshener, trivial. These are all trivial occasions. Take the police out of the equation, nothing bad happens.
Well, Jamie,
go ahead.
No. Just to insert this here, I compare the misadventures of the youths of these kids with what George W. Bush, our former president, says about his youth. I mean, he even went to Yale and spoke at the commencement and said, I don't even know how I got in here, let alone got through. And when you hear him talk about his life, I mean, I'm not diminishing him. I mean, I'm glad that he had the space to develop. When you hear Franklin Graham say, "Look, I had a really hard time growing up," And my father and I, just he could look back and say, "Look, you guys, I wasn't perfect. I'm not perfect now, but I really had a hard time. But I was surrounded by a community that loved me, that understood me, and that didn't send me to jail or threaten me with
Exactly.
arrest." Is that what you're talking about?
Well, I mean, so you put it in the very personal terms, which I share. I live on the South Side, a few blocks from Operation Push, and in a racially mixed neighborhood, raised two children now, off on their own. My kids, I mean, it's the job description of adolescents to act out. It's the job. It's their job description to go out and push the boundaries, transgress, screw up, learn from their screw ups. For my kids growing up with many black friends in Kenwood, the misadventures that they might have as middle class white kids, they might get a curfew violation. The same behavior for their black friends becomes a Greek tragedy. Becomes just a terrible sequence of events. And so there's no question. That's why I come back to the image of apartheid. Of a society that within it has two regimes of law and justice for two different populations. And, in South Africa, that was a matter of explicit positive law. Here, it's sort of de facto. It's a matter of practice. It's how we police. And as we've seen, the police officers have extraordinary power. They have extraordinary power. I mean, and I think it's right to use the imagery of George Floyd being executed on the street. He may have committed a crime. He may have passed a $20, a counterfeit 20, whatever.
But that's a federal offense, right? That's not something that's even in the jurisdiction of local police.
Yeah, but even putting that aside, there are whole procedures for finding out whether that happened, for adjudicating it, and so we have this tendency for the police to exercise this kind of swift authority, and I want to go back to this notion of the split second, because again and again they rush into the split second. And then they say, well, we had no choice but to shoot. We have a case in Chicago, as you well know, of a 13-year-old boy, Adam Toledo, shot by a police officer as he was complying with the police officer's command to raise his hands. And he was carrying a gun. He had dropped the gun and raised his hand. And at that moment, the police officer shot him.
Say that again. No. Say that again.
So the boy had been chased. There had been an incident. There had been shooting. Two individuals. They caught one of them. The boy fled. He was chased in an alley by a police officer yelling, "Stop! Stop! Drop it! Drop it!" Finally, the boy turns around, confronts the officer. The officer says, "Put your hands up." He is clearly in video footage from the officer's body camera lifting his hands at the moment the officer shoots him. Now, I want to stay with that for a moment, because I have a lot of feeling for that officer. I don't know much about him except from what's apparent on the body camera, but I think, I don't want to create any kind of equivalence between the boy dying on the ground in the alley and the officer who shot him, but both of them are caught up in this mode of policing. I mean, why did you have to chase him in the first place? The foot pursuit was ill-advised in the first place, and so it's an instance of being carried, and that's the officer is running. He's got adrenaline pumping. He had pulled the trigger before the moment, and in his mind. I mean, it happened because of the momentum of this encounter. So one of the things we just desperately need to do, there's lots of long-term work on changing the systems and changing the culture of policing, but we just need to reduce the number of interactions that have the danger of producing these kinds of outcomes and don't produce anything else of value. I mean, there's a lot of discussion now in view of recent incidents that why do we have people with guns enforcing traffic laws? What, a guy a street hustler selling loose cigarettes. Why are heavily armed, militarized, officers dealing with a problem like that? And at some level, why do we even regard it as a problem? So we've criminalized so much of life, and it creates a mode of policing, again, emphasizing, especially in black neighborhoods, that at best, it's alienating for people. We saw with stop and frisk, if you treat the whole population as presumptively suspect, that's just so alienating for people. But it also carries the risk. Any police encounter, as we've seen again and again, carries the risk of going off the rails and becoming horrific. So, first of all, we just need to reduce. I'm not advocating abolition per se, but we could greatly rein in, establish limits of law enforcement, and it now feels like we're at a point of beginning to have that conversation nationally.
Absolutely, and administer drug tests to the officers. Find out if they were on drugs. Find out if they had been drinking. Find out if they were at themselves. Yeah. Jamie?
Well, and also the mental health issues for officers are a serious matter, and it's not just they talk about post-traumatic stress disorder for officers and all of that. They also have really crappy working conditions. They have a crummy boss, so to speak, and so there are a lot of things that operate here, and I think what we need to do is really, and this does relate to the talk about defund the police and abolition, we need to really define clearly what we need people with guns for, what we need law enforcement officials who are armed to do, define those boundaries, and then demand the highest level of professionalism within those boundaries. And a lot of other stuff, can be left to community norms, can be addressed in other ways, and it's just hugely unproductive and counterproductive. And I think those, we talk a lot about community policing and stuff. I actually think limiting the role of law enforcement in the way I'm describing would do more for community trust in the police than almost anything else.
Well, I'm of the age where we used to have Officer Friendly. And so he was, when you saw him walking around, he was not someone you ran away from. He was someone you ran toward. And now, mind you, this was in a very middle class area that was racially mixed. Okay. So this was some time ago, more than 4 decades ago. So I'm very mindful of that, because at that same time, that's in the shadow of the killing of Mark Clark and Fred Hampton. There's a
You and I are roughly the same. We grew up in the same era, so yeah.
So it's like, you guys, there is, and I'm very clear that, depending upon income, which is what we've been talking about, because even Kenwood, Hyde Park, that's the University of Chicago. So a lot of people who live there go to the university, teach at the university. Come on. I grew up over there, so I totally get it. I have someone who really wants to weigh in with you. I think you know this person. I think her name is Chaparral. Chaparral. Everybody, the Somebody podcast, millions, more than 1 million people have downloaded it. It is something that you still need to go on and get, because it is fantastic. Chaparral, what is on your mind today?
Yes, Santita. I had to call when I heard that you were going to have Jamie on today, because I just want the world to know how great Jamie is, as well as also the Invisible Institute. I tell you, as a grieving mother, when no one listened to me, Jamie listened to me. When I first sat down with Jamie and told him the story about Courtney and what I thought could have happened to Courtney, he listened to me. And as a mom, when you had no other places to go, I went there. And the work that the Invisible Institute does is so much needed in the Black and Brown community. They are listening to mothers who have no voice. They are making sure that we have a voice that the public can hear. They're making sure that we get these stories out, the untold stories, not only Courtney's story, but like Aretha Augustus. You know, they're uncovering the truth that are hidden from the world. They're exposing the things that CPD tries to hide. And one of the things that I don't think a lot of people know is about the Citizen Data Project, which is one of the things that Jamie and the Invisible Institute put together to actually track the number of complaints and police accountability that are out there. And they just put out just this week about Eric Stillman, that he already had several complaints. And this is the police officer that shot little Adam Toledo. And I think that that's important, that we can see the history to see how how these police officers actually think, and how many times they're encountering this aggressive use of force. And so I wanted to just give kudos to Jamie and all of my gratitude for my family, and I just love you to death, because somebody would not be around if Jamie didn't help us to get it out there.
Well,
and I appreciate you, and I love you so much.
Just stay with me. Stay with us for a hot second, because the fact is, your son has a father. I mean,
Yes.
and I don't want us to forget Brent in all of this.
Yeah.
This wonderful husband, this father of Chaparral's 3 children. Now they've got a grandson named Justice. We often forget the fathers. Daunte Wright's father has been forgotten. Daunte Wright was calling his mother, but when his father found out that his son was in distress, he went to the scene. So I don't want to, I don't want to forget that too, because these are family systems that are that are forever changed. You know, we're human beings. We're not amoeba who split. It's not a mom who splits off and has.
If I can just
jump in.
If I can just jump in, I want to say, what a lovely way to start the day, hearing my dear friend Chaparral. And speaking of families, she is part of the Invisible Institute family, completely. I mean, we are so proud of the investigative podcast series that she's at the center of. She's the voice, she's the host, she's the heart and soul of it. And really urge your listeners, if they haven't heard somebody, to check it out, because I think it's really unique, and its uniqueness. I mean, we're proud to be part of it at the Invisible Institute, but the heart of it is Chaparral.
Absolutely. I mean, and what happened to her? But that's why when I brought this New York Times article to you, you said, no, this is in fitting with the mission of the Invisible Institute, because this has been invisible, but it's been in plain sight. These killings.
Yeah, and I think that's really what we have to grapple with as a society. It's as I say, and I understand. I mean, we look at the George Floyd situation and how that unfolded, and Derek Chauvin. I mean, the question of the racism of the individual officer is obviously part of what we need to investigate and better understand. But what we're dealing with are racist systems, racist modes of policing that are racist at their foundation, and will keep producing these results that are simultaneously tragic and avoidable. They're avoidable, and the first order of business is to just reduce the incidence of these things. So many of these incidents don't need to happen, and if we really are going to address the fundamental foundational issues of racial injustice in the society, it's the work of generations. But there are things we can do today, tomorrow, to reduce the likelihood of another Courtney Copeland, another Adam Toledo, and and I think that's the sense of urgency we need. Is there, we can dream and talk about transformation and abolition, and I think those dreams are important. It sort of enlarges our vision of what might be possible. But I think we have a responsibility to do today the things we can do to make these harms less likely tomorrow.
Everybody, I want to know from you, Jamie Calvin, is there anything left to say? I mean, because we are on pins and needles. They have really locked down Minneapolis, St. Paul, and now Brooklyn Center. That's been locked down for really like 3 weeks. We've had people who are from there on the show saying that we have 3 weeks ago 2,000 National Guardsmen deployed to this city, and it feels like an armed camp. I mean, this is what happens. Now you have Pat Robertson saying, hey, the police, you're going to lose your authority if you do not put Kimberly Potter and Derek Chauvin and the like under the jail because they're hurting you.
Yeah.
Your thoughts?
Well, I think the other, you touch on something else that's really not been, I think, discussed as much as it might. Last summer, we had the most massive demonstrations in U.S. history across the country in thousands of cities and small towns, in the post-George Floyd period. And so there's a whole question, and it's a complicated one, of police performance in managing protests and also, genuine criminal activity. I mean, as we know, in Chicago, there was looting and other destructive activity that nobody can describe as an exercise of First Amendment rights. But we've had this extraordinary public expression through classic, free speech, free assembly means. And the police play a role in the so-called public forum. That's one term that's been used in the law to describe the streets and the parks as a space in which citizens can assemble to express their views. And I'm often struck by the thought that these are opportunities. The demonstrations and the protests are actually opportunities for the police to build relationships and build trust. And they're opportunities for them to perform a set of values and sort of respect for the citizens who are coming out. And so often what you see, and you see some of that. I mean, there have been many, many peaceful demonstrations in which the police played a constructive role in the course of this last year. But then what you see is this kind of militarized response, both in terms of kind of saturating the zone, so to speak, so many boots on the ground, and just the physical, the way the officers are dressed and mobilized, like the sort of Terminator type outfits. It's just just think. Yeah, think of that as what's that expressing? What is that expressing about the role of the police?
And what does that say about America? Jamie Calvin, everybody, brilliant reporter. You got to come back. I've got to get your thoughts on this trial.
Anytime. Anytime.
I just love him, and he came on early in the morning, but he's up working anyway. Everybody, we're going to have Dante Wright's, bless your heart, Dante Wright's brother, Dimmick Bryant, in just a few minutes on the Santita Jackson Show. Jamie, you are just the best.
Oh, anytime. This is what I do.
Oh, no. Chaparral, are you still there?
Yes, I am. Yes, okay. I am.
You all can say something before I let you go because I've got to open up these phone lines.
Okay, thanks.
Yes,
thanks.
I was just gonna say, Jamie, I just appreciate all the hard work that you guys are doing, and keep up the great work. And I'm here to support you 100%.
Yeah, and you and I need to get together and talk about a next project to work on together.
Yes, for sure. I'm ready.
Okay, well we'll do that soon. Take care.
For sure.
Blessings to you.
Love you.
Thank you, Chaparral.
All right, honey. I'm going to watch your board now.
I know, but I knew you couldn't wait to jump in. Cha-cha. But I'm glad I know you didn't expect to hear him this morning, didn't you?
No, I
Well,
did
no,
not.
but when I saw the New York Times article, he's the first person I thought about. That was
Yeah, he
key.
is great with reporting.
Yeah, absolutely.
I'm gonna jump. I'm gonna jump off, guys.
Thank
Wonderful
you, Jamie.
to be
Blessings
talking
to
with
you.
both of you. Yeah, take care.
Bye bye.
Thank you.
Bye.
All right, sweetie, I'm open up. I lost 2 of my phone lines for calls. So I'm gonna let you
Okay.
go.
Love you. Thanks for
Love you.
letting me on.
No, oh please, you kidding me? So I can get harassed on social media by you? Come on, you know I already know. How about that? That's how we met. Everybody, she was harassing me online. You're not showing me any love. I said, okay, great. So I'm gonna let her go. But feel free to call back in, Chapearl. We're very honored to have Dimmick Bryant, the big brother of Dante Wright, with us. Everybody, we want to hear his story and see how the family's doing. Whew, it's a lot going on, everybody. A lot. So, thank you so much for being here with me today. Call me at 773-763-WCPT, 773-763-9278, and let us talk about what's going on. What do you expect to hear in these closing arguments from the prosecution and the defense today? I really am looking forward to hearing what they're all going to have to say. Hey, let me say hello to everybody. Brian and Yolanda and Michael Ann and Hannah from South Carolina. Samantha, Willie, Barbara Bacon from Oak Park, Carissa and Faye, and Linear Bob out there in San Jose. Eric Burrows from L.A. How you doing? Carol from L.A. Joyce, how you doing? Medi, Jessica, Francis, Calumet Park. That's right, Francis, and Dawn and Joyce. And I'm so glad that you all get involved with each other. Bernard and Bab out there in California. And it's a joy to be with everybody today. It's a joy. It's a joy. It's a joy. Oh boy! But what are you expecting from this trial? I mean, what do you expect to hear? Phew, it's a lot. It's a lot, everybody. It's a lot. It's a lot. So, but I'm going to do Metro Focus. It's a PBS show out of New York City. I'm going to do that tonight. Actually, we're going to tape it this afternoon, and not this afternoon, late this morning. Uh, while we're looking at the the closing arguments of the defense and the prosecution. What do you expect to see? What do you expect to see? Mm-mm-mm-mm. So we're going to be talking about that, but I can't wait to speak with Mr. Bryant. He is a very, very lovely young man, and God bless his family. God bless his family. Renee Faulkner, how you doing? And Medi and Mark Hay and Sheila, Shirley from Philadelphia. There you go. Daryl. Hi, Daryl. And let me see. Stanley, Hallelujah Davis. That's right, my guy. Vicky. So many of you. So many of you. It's an honor to be with you.
All right, I got everyone on hold except Demick. I'll keep calling him and let you know I get an answer.
Okay.
But sending everyone else through.
Okay, just if you could bring Mr. Bryant up.
I have everyone but Mr. Bryan. He's the only one not answering. I'll let you know I get him.
Okay, fantastic. Thank you. Hello, Dwight and Mr. Moss and CK Attorney Hoffler.
Yes, good morning.
How are you? Oh, CK, I've got a little beauty tip I'm going to share with you that you're going to love.
Okay. Any beauty tip?
Oh.
Is it going to reverse? I mean, I'm 37 now,
holding,
according to what I said.
Holding.
So is it going to make me 35 since I'm telling people I'm 37?
Honey, in a minute you'll be a
Even
zygote.
though
You'll be a collection of cells. You'll be a zygote. Just stop it. Just stop it. You'll go past being a fetus to an embryo. Ooh, to a zygote. I'm like, whoa, what's that? No, child. But you know what? It's something that you can like run through your hair and the color. like gold highlights and things.
60 seconds.
Oh, wow.
I know.
It's okay for your hair, and it's not anything that damages your hair?
No, you just, girl, you put it in. I put it in this morning because I haven't seen the woman who bleaches my hair. But I like it because I don't, because I don't like it to be so light because, it takes a few days for it to cure. And then I have to wear it curly so I don't look crazy and which is fine. But it's just, wearing my hair out is just so high maintenance. I just can't. It's just, it's a lot. I mean, and this is like, but I follow this woman, Bianca Renee, because we have the same hair texture and I love her. Because I find all these wonderful products. I spend all this money on all these products. Because when you have natural hair,
10 seconds.
that was always tough to manage back in the day. You couldn't get a relaxer and all that. But I'm going to tell you, I'm going to let you see this because you're going to love it.
We can change the world, change the world, change the world. We can change the world, we can change the world, change the world.
I love that. That's from the Sounds of Blackness. That's what we're trying to do. Santita Jackson, Monday, April 19th, 2021. This is the Santita Jackson Show, WCPT 820 in Chicago, and AM 950 Radio, Minneapolis, St. Paul, the voice of progressive Minnesota, and WCPT is the nation's largest progressive talk radio station. And because of your support, we've become highly competitive in the third largest market in the country. And we're getting people from all over the country, indeed all over the world, who are listening to these stations. And we want to thank you for that. Meet my morning stars on the Santita Jackson and Friends page and on Reverend Jesse Jackson's page. So I share it with him. I figure, why not? And then the Santita Jackson Show on YouTube, that channel. Please like and subscribe on the Santita Jackson Show channel on YouTube. Everybody, let's talk about the deliberations that the jurors of the Derek Chauvin trial are going to be going into. Today, we're going to hear the closing arguments of the defense and the prosecution. What will they say? What arguments will they present? And will they make a difference? It seems that Minneapolis, St. Paul, and Brooklyn Center, and Chicago, and other cities around the country are preparing for some kinds of demonstrations either way. So I want to know what you're thinking about all of this. Who do you think thus far has presented the strongest case? And what do you think about the Daunte Wright case? How will this impact that? We got a lot to talk about on the Santita Jackson Show, but there's a lot going on. What a time to be in talk radio, everybody. Let's go to some of these headlines. Chicago, we're going to have a high of 50 degrees with showers. Minneapolis, St. Paul, a high of 41 degrees and cloudy. Wow. The Chicago Cubs took a bit of a beating from Atlanta yesterday, 13-4. Wow, the Twins will be playing the A's tomorrow, but the White Sox, well, they were successful against the Red Sox yesterday, 5-1, and today they will be playing the Red Sox once again. Well, Dr. Fauci is going after the so-called vaccine deniers, everybody. He's saying that they're hurting the efforts to lift the COVID-19 restrictions. So what do you think about that? His comments came as the government announced that half of all adults in the United States had received at least one COVID-19 shot, marking another milestone in the nation's largest ever vaccination campaign. Almost 130 million people, 18 or older, have received at least one dose of a vaccine, or 50.4% of the total adult population, according to the CDC. Almost 84 million adults, or about 32.5% of the population, have been fully vaccinated. So what do you think about that, everybody? Have you gotten your vaccine? Do you plan to get the vaccine? We saw over the past weekend, President Obama joined forces with President Biden to really inspire the Black community and the Latino communities to get the shot. Do you think that'll work? What is happening? Will there be outreach to the white evangelicals, white Republicans, who are more resistant than anyone to getting this? Let's talk about it. Minneapolis is bracing for unrest as the Derek Chauvin trial enters its final phase. That is today. We will hear the closing arguments of the defense and the prosecution, and that comes against the backdrop of the fatal shooting, the killing of Daunte Wright by Brooklyn Center police officer Kimberly Potter. What do you think about all of that, everybody? Call me, text me at 773-763-WCPT, 773-763-9278. We want to hear from you. That comes amidst the news that over the past weekend, more and more people are going into Minneapolis, St. Paul, Brooklyn Center because we're seeing protests that police are anticipating all over the country. In Chicago, Minneapolis, St. Paul, Brooklyn Center. That's right. The reports are that people will be protesting no matter what is going to happen with this trial. So, what do you think about that? And, of course, Maxine Waters, she told Minnesota protesters, we've got to get more confrontational. We got to stay in the street. And you have to remember, um, Maxine Waters is from the same place that Michael Brown was from. She is from what was a sundown town. That is to say that black people had to be indoors at sundown. That's how Maxine Waters grew up. This is before she got to LA, everybody. Throughout the trial over George Floyd's death, killings by police mount, according to this New York Times report. Since testimony began on March 29th, at least 64 people have died at the hands of law enforcement nationwide, with Black and Latino people representing more than half of the dead. As of Saturday, the average was 3 killings a day. Now, this information has been compiled by the New York Times, and they're pulling this from gun violence databases, news media accounts, and law enforcement releases. It offers a snapshot of policing in America in this moment, but is it really just in this moment? Think about it. Darnella Frazier, a 17-year-old who did not live through Jim Crow or the killing of so many leaders, black leaders. At 17 years of age last year, she pulled out her phone, sent her 9-year-old cousin into Cub Foods and said, hey, I know where this is going and I don't want this baby to see this. Wow. Speaking of crazy, Congressman Jamal Bowman out of New York said, look, he and fellow squad member, they're the progressives in the U.S. House of Representatives, AOC Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, they are condemning the New York Police Department's use of robotic dogs, everybody. They're called digi-dogs, robotic canines, and they've been deployed in over-policed communities of color, according to this report. Bowman lamented that while there are people, quote, living in poverty, struggling to put food on the table, keep a roof over their head, take care of their kids, afford childcare, all this going on, and now we got a robot police dog walking down the street. Strange, everybody, because I'm just trying to figure out with this robotic dog, when do they stop attacking a human being? What do you think about that? Let me know about the robotic dog. You tell me. 773-763 WCPT 773-763-9278. We got a magnificent panel. We're waiting to get Dante Wright's brother on the air with us today. But you know what? We've got Attorney C.K. Hoffman, the president of the National Bar Association, the largest and oldest black bar association in the world. White McKee, social scientist, known affectionately as Dr. D, the dean here on the Santita Jackson Show, and Spike Moss, brilliant activist, organizer for more than 5 decades. He's someone who put his arms of protection, loving arms of protection around a Prince. Yes, that Prince. And Jimmy Jam and Terry Lewis. Yes, those persons and so many persons, to make sure that they had the talent shows where they could display their talents, to make sure that they would be able to be in the choirs, that they would be able to go to the Upward Bound programs. All of these things he's been doing, not just with our young people, but with the people of Minneapolis, St. Paul, and that greater area. The third or fourth worst place for black people to live in the United States of America. Let me go right to you, Spike Moss, because this weekend you've had Reverend Jesse Jackson visiting, you've had Congresswoman Maxine Waters. I mean, some in the media are giving her criticism for saying that people need to become more confrontational and that they need to stay in the street. What is your response to her entreaty for people to stay in the street?
Well, the response is accurate because all levels of government have not acted in our behalf. I had the opportunity on your show to acknowledge in Minnesota alone, there's been no governor to put any legislation on the table to save the lives of people of color, no Senate and no House of Representatives, no human rights, no civil rights office. There's been no mayor, no city council, no civil rights that has ever put anything in place to save the life of people of color. You are now forced to put yourself in harm's way because if you want justice, you're going to have to do it. When you look at Lil Wright, the last one that gets shot there in Brooklyn Center, that's a common practice across the nation that we can get killed in a traffic stop. When you talk about where we're over half of who's getting shot, recognize, please, that most whites that get stopped, it's not about traffic. It's about them breaking the law in some form or fashion, not willing to give up. Us, it's a simple thing like traffic. So we have to make our noise in every way we can, or this will go on in America like it's not happening, and most white Americans are either glad or don't care. So as they look the other way, we are dying at the hands of law enforcement with a legal badge as they break the law across this nation on a daily, weekly, and monthly. And so I have looked at people and their grief from this, from the beginning of my career to the end. All we get out of it is grief. Our hearts are broken. We lost a loved one over their madness of a traffic stop. You can talk about what he was after. You can talk about what he might have did before. But the day they lose their life, it's about nothing. A traffic stop is nothing. You need to write a ticket, write it. But the goal with the pressure that they go to pull guns the way they do, and then they quickly tell each other what to say to try to get out of it. They quickly put their stories together to try to get out of it. And then the county attorney, usually he reinforces it by coming with very little charges or none at all. You get to court, you got all white jury, but they say you're going to be judged by your peers. That's not there. You got to go in front of a white judge. You think he's going to admit he's racist, he's prejudiced, or he's a bigot? He's not going to. And you're sitting there in a kangaroo court looking for justice with a lawyer that's costing you in a system that won't allow you to have justice. So the young people hit the street. I think I told you the other day, I took Jesse up there to the protest, and it did so much for their spirits. They already know they're right, and they already know they're criticized. But when they see him, it uplifts their spirits to do what they were doing. When we were in the meeting with Maxine the other day, every time she opened her mouth, she said something powerful in that meeting, because we met with the family, and Jesse sitting there in between the two of them, embracing them and trying to help them get through it. And then at the end, praying for everybody, because we all know in our minds it's a possibility we won't receive any justice. So God bless them young people. Keep standing up the way they do. And by the way, they stand up all day. They stand up into the night. And they stand up whether you put a curfew on them or not, because it's all or nothing. This is ground zero. Either we win, or we have finally been announced by America, you don't count, you don't matter, you ain't home, you ain't human, you're not a citizen, you're not a taxpayer, and you don't matter. So it's going to be one way or the other. Either you let us know we're Americans, you let us know we're human, or you tell us we're not anything. And I expect them to tell us we're not anything. So stay your behind in the street and keep standing up for yourself.
What is Minneapolis, St. Paul, what is Brooklyn Center looking like? We've seen Kimberly Potter's home. She is the officer who shot and killed Dante Wright. We see the concrete barriers and the metal fencing around her house. Does Minneapolis, St. Paul feel that way? Or is it just a black community? Or what's going on? Are there any extra security precautions being taken there?
They are, but it's all about business. I mean, you know what to do to protect your business. You just don't know what to do to protect our lives. Immediately, you want to put us in check about your businesses. Immediately, you want to protect everything that you have because you value those buildings more than you do black life. And you keep telling us that with your action. You take taxpayers' money to the woman's house who committed murder. That's what she committed. You put the barricades there. You put squad cars there with a presence that looks like it's a police precinct, because you have decided she's not guilty of anything. She killed a black person. So she's not guilty of anything. So all the taxpayers' money is dumped right around her house. But think about this. When we go to jail, we can get a $100,000 bail for burglary. She got a $100,000 bail. This woman walked for $10,000 for killing a human being. So they keep sending us these signals. They're not mixed. They're clear with clarity. We don't care nothing about you. Immediately, that city decided to spend that kind of money around her house. She's not the victim. She's the perpetrator. So everybody feels on both sides of the river the same way I'm speaking right now. And that's why, and I'll go a little further. Both sides of the river, in most cities and most towns in St. Paul, have people down here in these protests, and they're very serious. I will never deny there's anarchists in that group. I'll never deny that there's those neo-Nazis and Klan and all of them with their little thing to take over their government. But I'm saying for the most part, everybody is dug in on this murder of people of color. And they are joined at the hips We spent a lot of time out there the other day with Jesse, and the message with it is clear. They're not going to give up, but they also don't believe. So how could they give up?
Let me go to you. Robert Patillo, attorney Robert Patillo, host of your own show on WAOK, the iconic Black Talk radio station down in Atlanta, Georgia. And you were on the air yesterday from 1 to 4. And of course, you're also the director of the Southeastern Regional Office of Rainbow Push. What are you seeing? What are you hearing? I mean, because we get the sense that this is not, that people are ready to demonstrate not just in Minneapolis, but all over the country.
Well, one of my callers brought up yesterday the question of if this isn't enough to convict somebody of first-degree murder of a black man or a police officer of first-degree murder of a black man, then what exactly would have to be the factual situation? What exactly would it take? You have video evidence. You have no question as to what is going on. You have eyewitnesses there at the scene. You have the background. You have everything that you would need. And if that's not enough, what exactly would be the fact set necessary in order for something along those lines to happen? And what exactly is the value of the life of a black man in this country, where we have to paint it on the side of the road that Black Lives Matter in order to remind people that simple fact, but then it's forgotten as soon as the sign starts to fade, because all the corporations, all the industries, all of the sports teams and so on and so forth that were giving those great slogans last year are silent this year when they represent the hitting the road on things like voter suppression and efforts to roll back much of the criminal justice reform that we've seen nationwide. And also, what are we going to do systemically to address the thin blue line mentality within police departments? What we saw is when police jurisdictions around the country, including Atlanta, tried to actually hold officers accountable, tried to put in review boards and put in various efforts to reel in the power of police. You see massive police slowdowns nationwide, which resulted in crime waves and spikes in violence and calls to replace those public officials. So what is going to be the solution when these people literally hold our lives and our livelihoods in their hands, and any effort at regulating them results in chaos and anarchy in the streets? It is as if in their mind there is no option. Either it's complete anarchy or it's a police state. And there is no middle ground in between where regular people can have their civil liberties and their constitutional rights respected. So I think there's that quote from Langston Hughes, from James Baldwin: to be black in America and even slightly conscious is to be in a state of perpetual rage. And I think that's where people are, because you can't get out of the Derek Chauvin's trial before you get hit over the head with Dante Wright. You can't get that process before you get the Adam Toledo video in your face. We're still talking about whether or not the Justice Department will reopen the investigation to Tamir Rice, and all of this with the backdrop of nothing being done on the federal level to address these issues. And we're watching other Democratic campaign issues being pushed through at the same time with the things that turned out massive numbers of African Americans to vote, and what really gave them the presidency and definitely gave them the majority of the Senate were black voters and young voters demanding police reform and criminal justice reform. That the ball keeps getting pushed down the line to the point we're going to run out of time, supposedly, when we get to election season again. So people are really demanding action, and they're not seeing the federal leadership necessary to make it across the board. State and local governments can no longer do it on their own. It has to be a federal issue.
Dwight McKee, your thoughts?
Well, when you look at all of the situations we're dealing with, whether it's immigration or it's police brutality or voter suppression, it's all about the same thing, which is white supremacy. We have to understand and realize that this country is built on the notion of white supremacy, and they're not going to give up their white privilege easily. It's going to be a struggle. It has been a struggle, will be a struggle, will always be a struggle. And there is no win. There's only going to be struggle. But we have to be prepared to see it that way and to struggle. We can never get caught in the okie doke of the illusion of inclusion. It's a battle. It's set up against us. It's set up for us not to win, and we can either we got to fight or we got to die, as the song says. We got to hold the bloodstained battle. It's a fight, and it's going to be a fight every day, and we have to teach our children and our grandchildren, this is what you're dealing with. This is what we're faced with. You have to learn to fight, fight, fight. We're fighting for our lives and our survival and survival of our posterity.
Attorney C.K. Hoffler, your thoughts. I have 2 minutes before we go to break.
My thoughts are that we, as Dwight McKee said and as Robert said, we just have to keep fighting. We need to fight and make sure that there's widespread reform, policing reform. George Floyd Justice and Policing Act needs to be passed. And I think we need to pray for our nation, for our children, for our Black and brown children, because if there is not justice in this Derek Chauvin trial, then there's going to be a level of desperation, I believe, that we haven't seen in a long time. Certainly we've been here before, in a long time, that is going to trigger a number of very, very disturbing things in this country. Because as Robert said, what is it going to take? It probably would take a police officer saying, I'm now going to shoot and kill this Black man, don't like Black people, never like Black people, and I'm a racist, and so I'm now going to shoot and kill. Boom. And that makes no sense. That's not how life works. That's not how the criminal mind works. So, and that will never happen. It simply would never happen. So the evidence is as compelling as it possibly could be. And the Derek Chauvin case, it was presented exceptionally well. With the exception of a couple witnesses that stumbled, which happens in trial, they really presented a very strong case. The defense was just bumbling here and there, saying, making up stuff as they went along, which is what the defense does a lot. They don't have to prove a case. They just have to throw up enough that would create a reasonable doubt. So if under these circumstances, there is no justice and there is the acquittal, not a hung jury, but the acquittal of Derek Chauvin, I think it's going to send an extraordinarily powerful, oppressive signal to this country and the world about justice in the United States.
The whole world is watching, everybody. Everyone is watching. Will you be watching the closing arguments of the defense and the prosecution today? Will the media tell the story of the conditions in which people really find themselves living in Minneapolis, St. Paul, and Brooklyn Center? Not just today, but why is this one of the worst places in the United States for Black people to live? Ironically, where the Mississippi River begins. Why is this one of the worst places for Black people in America to live today? Hey, everybody, I want to hear from you. Just let me know what's going on the Santita Jackson Show. Call us at 773-763-WCPT, WCPT 820 in Chicago, the nation's largest progressive talk radio station and the voice of progressive Minnesota, AM 950. I'm Santita Jackson, and that's the sounds of blackness. Talking about freedom. Back in just a minute. Hey, you guys, you all are great. I'm going to go to some of these callers. We've been trying to get in touch with Mr. Bryant, but when I spoke with him, bless his heart, he was out marching until late.
He's there every day.
I mean, he is out taking up for his brother, and it just, whew. Oh my goodness. It's a lot to even, I dare not put myself in his shoes. Dare not do that. I cannot do that. And I tell you what, I tell you this, no police officer would be able to tell me, oops. I thought I was holding the taser and it was a gun. No. It becomes very academic, everybody, until it's someone you love. Think about that. This is a Christmas that will never be the same for this family. And Easter, a Thanksgiving. Think about that. See, when these things happen, and then they're best friends, they're buddies. Think about the person who was in the car with Dante Wright. Thank goodness, oh my gosh, that bullet didn't go all the way through. That was what some experts mused. They said, thank goodness the bullet did not go all the way through because you would have had a double tragedy. Although you already did because you have a survivor's guilt, and absolute trauma of being in a car with someone where you're having some fun one moment and then they're dead the next. But I think we still have a lot of questions to answer, and it'll be very interesting. I hope I know what I'm looking at when we get back on the other side. I certainly want you and Robert, CK, you and Robert, to tell us what we should be looking for. But I'm going to go to a couple of these callers. But while we're on Facebook Live, for these couple of minutes, CK, just like in about 30 seconds, what should we be looking for from the defense and the prosecution today?
Today, we should be looking for a summary of the evidence, the most salient points, the most critical points that they want the jury to remember, the things that will prove for the prosecution, prove their case that there is no reasonable doubt that Derek Chauvin should be convicted of all three counts, not one, not two, but all three. And they will present as an alternative if you feel that there's not enough evidence for this, although there's plenty of evidence, and they will show the evidence to support every one of them. At a minimum, you have to do that. But they are going to put on a compelling case to remind them of all of those witnesses, the 30-plus witnesses, 35-plus witnesses that testified and what they said. Now, the defense is going to just say, look, prosecution didn't prove their case because there's at least a possibility that George Floyd died of this. He had a bad heart. He had ingested drugs. These are things he came to the table. We're sorry about it, but, he ingested drugs. And by the way, he was a big guy who needed to be subdued because he had ingested drugs. And there could be some carbon monoxide somewhere. And he was there, and that's all that contributed to his death. You heard our experts say that. And all they need to do is inject that doubt, that reasonable doubt that one juror or several jurors will feel very strongly about. So that's what we can expect.
CK, we heard that
60 seconds.
Reverend Show. We heard the caller. It happens every week.
Yep.
Where the caller says he didn't mean to do it. Yeah, he did this, but he didn't. Maybe he. I said, you know what? That seed of doubt is out there now. Is it in the jury pool? I don't know. But we're going to find out. I'm going to go to some of these callers, but I'm going to have you, of course, circle back and tell us what we need to be looking for. Oh, Adrian, you love this ring to match? My necklace girl got them like years apart, like 7 or 8 years apart. 7 or 8 years apart. And I just realized that it matched this necklace because I've had this necklace about 4 or 5 years. I've never worn it. I just realized I had all of this together, and it's it's like a great set, right? Okay, CK. I've talked to my
10 seconds.
about everything, but everybody, I can hear something in the background, so let's just make sure that we keep it quiet, and then we're going to come right to these callers. Thank you so much.
We can change the world, change the world, change the world.
Welcome back to the Santita Jackson Show. We can change the world. I love it. From the Sounds of Blackness, everybody. Thank you, Gary Hines, for giving us permission to use that because we can change the world, and we are doing that. But we got a lot of ship to this is a big yacht to turn around. Okay, so we got a lot of work to do. Santita Jackson Show, Monday, April 19th, 2021, WCPT 820. And AM 950 Radio, Minneapolis, St. Paul. Call us at 773-763 WCPT 773-763-9278. We are taking your calls. Let's go to Michael from Chicago. Michael, what's on your mind?
Oh, yes. I was calling in regards. Oh, I'm sorry. Good morning, everybody. Good morning, and God bless everybody for speaking up in the Black community. I have a problem with this. I think the charges that they gave the officer in Minnesota, I think they should have been first-degree murder charges, not no second-degree, fourth-degree, or no manslaughter. She should have been charged with first-degree murder. And like I always say, she knew the difference between a taser and a gun. And if God forgive, if that officer, the one that killed George Floyd, if he gets off, it's going to be another like what happened in California when they thought those officers for beating Rodney King, and they got up and they had to retry them, So I don't know. I think this world is going to go up in a racial explore one day with all the racism that's going on. here
Well,
in the world.
and you know what, Michael, and the abuse of power, because you see, and I'm not diminishing or minimizing racism and white supremacy at all, but I also see uh, police power absolutely abused in countries all around the world, and we've got to look at that, how power is exercised and how power chokes people. Sending Michael much love here in Chicago because we know a whole lot about this. Lance from Wheaton, how you doing, Lance? What's on your mind?
Oh, I'm sorry. You can't call me Lance. This is Chris from Wheaton.
Oh, Chris, how you doing?
How are you, Miss Santita?
It's great hearing your
And the crew.
voice.
Oh, I'm good. I appreciate this discussion as always with this a wonderful panel that you got. You know, I've been reflecting on this a lot, just the entire situation over the you know, for a long time. It feels like endlessly now, as far as the role of police in our cities. And this is about as close as you'll get to me defending police. But the undercurrent, many of these situations that I don't think is always being discussed, of course it's difficult to address, is that on any given day, any person you pull over can have a gun. Like, guns are so endemic to our society that you can't, and again, I'm not defending police. I've had a policeman put a gun to my head outside Chicago on Vincennes Avenue. Like, I know all, to some degree as a white person, not to the degree that the everyday black person does, but I've seen police while out before. My thing is that I try to understand when you are constantly in a state of like, I'm going to get shot, I'm going to get shot, I'm going to get shot. Who knows? I couldn't imagine what that would be like. And I'm like, even saying these words, I choke on them because like I am no fan of those police at all. But I'm trying to understand where they come from. And looking at that Adam Toledo case, which is one of the most heartbreaking things ever, a child, a baby on the street. It's that if Adam Toledo went and shot someone that night with his gun, where are the police? Why aren't the police doing something about it? You know what I mean? It's the guns. The guns are such a serious issue. They're just a fuse that lights up the whole thing. And this doesn't forget the police, but I think that's a serious issue that needs to be addressed.
Well, you know, Chris, I think you're making some points, but you know what? You know, when people were lynched, they were, strung from trees. I think we're going to have to, America's a very young nation, and we're also a very violent nation. That's really at the core of our founding. Genocide, the killing of just 90% of of the indigenous peoples. I mean, come on. So I think we have to look at the violence by whatever means it's carried out, by whatever means the violence is enacted. We need to really look at that because we are a baby among nations and we become so powerful. And it's very dangerous to give someone so young this much power because it's almost inevitable that they abuse it because you've not matured your way into it. And that's clear with us. Let me go. Call us at 773-763-WCPT, 773-763-9278. Let me go back to you, Spike Moss. What are you expecting today? I mean, how are people? Are people just are they anticipating? Are they waiting to hear what the defense and what the prosecution are going to say? Are people going to watch?
Of course, they're waiting to hear finally, do they matter? Of course, they want justice that's been denied them before I got started in 66. They've never been allowed it. Of course, they're traumatized. Of course, they're hurt. Of course, they're grieving. For many of them, especially whites, they're just now waking up to what's happening to us. And so here it's a powder keg that I share with you, probably the first show we did together. It's a powder keg waiting to be lit by white folks making the right decision in their minds. I was listening to your discussion from 1966. I have never had one case where a black person had a gun that got killed. Not even one. I even shared with you on maybe the second show when they did a drug raid, they was at the wrong house and black people were out there looking at the raid and we're hollering to them, that's the wrong house. There's nobody in there but two senior citizens. They turned around and threw a grenade in there. And then it was an old well and drove off. So I know in other cities, you've got a lot of cases where they said it looked like he had a weapon. I thought he had a weapon. I didn't know it was a cell phone. He moved. He didn't follow my commands. It's not about too many guns here. They're shooting at a color. They're not shooting at guns. They're shooting at a color. When I heard the brother talk about the sports situation changing their minds. Well, they didn't really change their mind. They were forced to do what they did because of the players. Because anytime the year before the last Super Bowl, at the end of the season, the NFL alone, they made, after all expenses, $28 billion. That doesn't mean they love us or care about us. Hell, we've always been able to entertain them. Even in slavery, we could go to the big house and buck dance for them and sing for them. You know, they're not hung up about us entertaining them. And the fact that they give us money, they see us as slaves they own. And so, no, it's not like that. No matter how much money we generate for these universities and these NFL and baseball teams, basketball teams, they are not going to change their attitude towards us. They'd kill one of them just like they'd kill one of us because we're just entertainment for them. But I think to all of your listeners, we ain't get shot just being us. We ain't got to do nothing. Just show up. I had a Marine guy, and I'll close with this, Eric Benford. He got shot because he gave a white lady a ride, and there was some kind of argument in the store. He waiting in the car. He got out to see what the argument was, and the officer said, "Are you with that end?" and shot him on the spot. He was home on leave. His father was our civil rights director, Eric Benford. So you don't have to have nothing. You don't have to do nothing. The Marine they had in the car, they shot and killed Eric for asking a question. He barely knew the woman. He met her in the bar. She asked for a ride home. So when they're arguing, he didn't get in the argument. He said, "What's the problem?" The officer said, "Are you with that end?" and shot him dead in his uniform.
CK and Robert, what should we be looking at? Because I know I don't have the trained eye. I'm not a lawyer. What should we be looking out for today? First you, CK, and then you, Robert.
We should be looking out for a very, very organized, methodical presentation. And Santita, the fact that you're not a lawyer is a blessing in this sense. Those jurors are not lawyers. So what you hear, what you see, how you perceive is going to be more proximate or closer to what those jurors are seeing, sensing, and feeling. It's a lawyer's job at this point to speak truth to power, if you will, and to present that evidence. That's the prosecutor's job. And for the defense, their job is just to create that reasonable doubt, not just any old kind of doubt, but reasonable doubt that a reasonable juror, one of those jurors, will find compelling. And they're going to be speaking to one or two people, the defense, just one or two people that they hope will be a leader and carry the day to an acquittal or to a hung jury.
Robert Patillo.
Well, 2 points. One, to the caller's point about police having a hard job and the fact that guns are the issue. Everybody has a hard job. Lawyers have a hard job, but if one of your clients, you accidentally get them the death sentence, they're going to come after you. If a surgeon accidentally kills somebody, they're going to come after you. Police are the only entity that has a hard job where if you accidentally kill people, you don't have the same level of culpability as any other profession. And when we have the issues with lynching in this country, nobody said trees are the problem. Let's cut down the trees to stop the lynchings. You have to change the laws to stop the lynchings, just as you need to change the laws to stop these police killings in our community now. So when we talk about it, it's almost as if we feel impotent. We feel as if we have no ability to change these things. But we do, we can, and we have. We simply need the political will. The George Floyd Justice and Policing Act is just a start. That should be the beginning. There's very little difference between that law and the bill that Tim Scott tried to pass last year out of the Senate, except for the qualified immunity part. So we're going to need a more aggressive bill, but we can't even get that bill pushed through right now because we lack the political will to do so, despite all the slogans and T-shirts and signs and billboards last year saying that there is not. So that is where we're going to have to get back up, get back on our campaign mode and go and push, because we can't do the same thing we did during the Obama administration and stay at the inauguration for 8 years and just assume everything's going to be okay. We have to push our agenda just like every other group is going to push their agenda. And during closing arguments, I'm going to expect the defense to try to make this the George Floyd trial. There's going to be a referendum on George Floyd. The jurors are going to have to answer the questions in their mind. Is there a chance that George Floyd simply died on his own. Derek Chauvin had his knee on his shoulder, and the man passed away from a drug overdose, and his heart conditions and the fentanyl and the stress of the situation from him resisting, and Derek Chauvin was unfortunately just there while it happened. If one juror believes that, then there's very little that can be done. So that's why the prosecution or the defense rather, is going to make this trial about George Floyd. We saw the 404B motion early in the trial that made it difficult to get any prior bad acts information in about Chauvins. So the only thing we're really talking about with Chauvins are his actions on the day of. What we're talking about with George Floyd is a referendum on his life.
What could drive reasonable doubt? I mean, what would it take for one juror to just say it wasn't? Yeah, I saw his knee on his neck. Yeah, I saw that. But CK, what could drive what?
Well, I think reasonable doubt can be created where a juror, and I don't agree to this. I don't agree with this. I didn't see the reasonable doubt, but a juror may believe, well, George Floyd was uncontrollable. He was out of control. He had ingested drugs in his system. His adrenaline was high. He was big and huge. Derek Chauvin was a smaller man, and even with the handcuffs, he had a difficult time restraining him, and so he did everything that he could. In retrospect, 2020, should he have done something different? Perhaps, but given all that he had confronted him with this unruly, big, King Kong-like black man, he did the best he could. That would be reasonable doubt. If there's a juror that believes that, and the juror might say, I am so saddened. I am sorry that George Floyd died. I wish he hadn't died. I wish there weren't civil unrest. But the way I look at the evidence, I just don't see where he intended to kill him. Now, again, it's going to be up to the lawyers to explain the jury instructions and to explain what's going to be required for a conviction under each of the counts that they're seeking. But, a lot of times jurors are lay people. They're going to go with how they feel the sense of justice, and they may not be so focused on the technicalities. And that could be in favor of the prosecution or the defense. So the reasonable doubt will be created where they put in all the other things, the baggage of George Floyd, as I would call it, the demonization of George Floyd, where, he basically came to the table a criminal and someone who had placed himself in a precarious position to be killed. That's how reasonable doubt potentially could be interpreted or created for a juror in the case. Again, I don't believe that that's reasonable, because I believe it is reasonable to trust your eyes. 9 minutes, 29 seconds. That video is the most compelling evidence of the entire case.
Spike Moss, is there any way that you could see, say, if not even a conviction, but not exoneration, but say a conviction on the lowest level charge? How do you think people would react to that?
They're not going to back up. I mean, it's just too old. You got to remember, just because Minnesota kept the world from seeing our cases all these years doesn't mean that the people who live here didn't see them all these years. And everything she says as a lawyer is correct. And what white folks do, they voted for all these laws and rules that they hide behind. That is their protection. But even what looms even larger in communities that really, because you got to remember now, I said to you on one of your shows, in the South, I was born in Jim Crow, but they wrote signs white only. They didn't go to the courthouse or the Capitol and make it law. Minnesota is the only state that went to the Capitol and drew up covenants where black people could live, what black people could have, and never took the covenants down to this day. So when you bring in white people from any part of Minnesota, they all pretty much have the same mentality. We're outnumbered in every way. That's why no laws or nothing has changed, even beyond police brutality. We have the worst banking system in the entire country. And of those banks, Wells Fargo treats us the worst. But it allows white people to have 74 to 76% of all the mortgages, but it keeps black people and people of color together, not even 20%. And you can't even receive a $40,000 loan if you make $140,000 if you're black. You got to give up everything, including your children. So I'm just saying that when you can't count 1% of the businesses, if you look at how we suffer in school, how we suffer in the prisons, how we suffer on the jobs, I mean, Anyone that walks in that courtroom should go against us because that's the very nature of Minnesota. It's always went against us. All the way back to the first vice president that left here. That was Calhoun. We were in an anti-slave state. When he was the first vice president before Mondale and Humphrey, he voted for slavery. But most people who even live here don't know Minnesota was a slave state way up here in the north, which was an anti-slave state, buying and selling slaves. So the mentality goes back so far in Minnesota. The ugliness, and it's been passed down for generations, it's still here, present. It's going to be a miracle. And as my sister said earlier, prayer is all we really got when it comes to the feelings of white America. And the brother said it right. They're pushing us towards war because that's what they want. And I said it on your show. They don't want a civil war. They want a race war. They've always wanted a race war. So we're stuck between the rock and a hard place. The decision is we don't care which way it goes. The decision is we want a victory. All of that is in the street. And they're all waiting except for...
What does that mean?
Well, they just don't believe in the system itself. They don't believe it could render justice on their behalf. So we shouldn't throw up the white flag. We should get ready to stand up. Nobody here is thinking positive. I'm serious. They all think they're going to lose. Nobody's thinking positive. And so the whites are not thinking positive. The blacks are not thinking positive. The Asians are not. The Latinos are not. The Native Americans are surely not in this state. You know, their national organization sprung from here. AIM came from here. The National Coalition Against Racism in Sports and Media, they just won the case against the Redskins. They're here. But they have went through everything we went through. So nobody really believes because no group has received justice.
Dwight McKee, your thoughts?
This is about power. This is not about justice.
Okay, Dwight, we need to get you in a good place. We can't hear you.
Can you hear me?
You're going in and out. Keep talking. Keep talking. Keep talking.
I said this is not about justice. This is about power. And the people who are in power don't want to give it up. It's going to be, the answer to your question is what is going to look like today. It depends on how the case comes out. If he comes out guilty, there's going to be mild jubilation. If he comes out not guilty, there's going to be a organized chaos. And we have to also understand the systemic nature of racism. That this is not about a particular trial, a particular case. They may sacrifice him and put him on the altar for the sake of some peace, some tranquility. But the fact of the matter is, Brother Paul says, this racism is systemic. It is in the DNA of the country. And until we dismantle that, we will always have this sub-racism. He made a real good point, and I'll call it a day, and when he said that even the nature of police violence is different. Most white people, or many white people who get killed by the police, they are dealing with suicide by cop. They're setting themselves up to get killed for whatever reason they have. Whereas our people get killed based on mishaps, traffic violations, miscellaneous kind of situations. Even those statistics are deceitful because you think it's all the same thing. And it's not. This thing is systemic, vicious, and it seems to be at one level everlasting. Fight the good fight.
Robert, do you think this is the pandemic that's pushing this, or is it the economy, or is it just time?
It's just time. The only thing, there's a meme going around the internet, and I like to quote Greek mythology, but I also quote a meme from time to time. There's a meme that says the only thing that's changed since Rodney King has been the video quality. And I think what we're dealing with is a reckoning where now these images are in our face 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. There is not so much just the urban legends and stories of black men. They're discounted as they've been for decades and generations. Now it's in our face. That if the Adam Toledo shooting had happened 10 years ago without body cams, then the only story we would have heard is a kid with a gun pulled it on cops and got shot. There will be no non-biased person or technology to show us what actually happened. Same thing with the killing of Dante Wright. If this was 10 years ago, 20 years ago, they would have said, well, he was reaching for my gun, he was struggling, so we had to stop him before he injured one of the officers, and they would have went on. So
Wait a
what has
minute.
changed has
Chauvin
been
tried to lie that night, to your point,
ex-
Robert, to his
exactly. If it
supervisor.
wasn't
Oh, my gosh.
so what has really changed is the fact that now people can see it. But even with being able to see it, when someone has their mind made up one way or the other, as we talked about before, when you're a kid in elementary school, they bring the cops in to talk to you, to throw the ball with you, to teach them they're here to protect and serve you. So it's Superman, Captain America, police, fire department. That's the way that people see. You're raised to see cops in this country, and for white people in this country, it's very easy to continue seeing them that way up into adulthood. And you want to give them the benefit of the doubt. In your mind, why would they want to kill black people in this country? Clearly, they're always looking for some reason that this black person got themselves killed. And once they can create that, it calms their own minds. That they can say, well, that is the real reason behind this. It's not that a cop wanted to kill him, it was because he was on drugs. It's not that the cops wanted to kill him, it's because he had a gun a couple seconds before they shot him. It's not that they wanted to kill him, it's because he resisted arrest. If you just comply, you won't get shot. These are the fairy tales they tell themselves because that takes away the culpability. So when it comes to how does somebody come to a place of quitting, well, if you want to believe the cop, you're going to believe him. It's kind of like being in a bad relationship where this person sitting there lying to your face, but you want to believe that they're going to change this time. You want to believe that lipstick on their collar wasn't really lipstick. You want to believe the best in them, and you can convince yourself of anything. So it's very plausible that one or more of the jurors believes Chauvin's, and because of the predisposition we have in this country for believing the police officer, when we see the regalia, when we see the record, when we see this individual we're taught to respect, but it's a very dangerous precedent. Because what we still have to ask the question of is, what exactly would it take to convict a cop for murdering a black man in this country? I don't think if this isn't enough, then I don't think any of us have any clear idea of what it would take, other than, as TK said, a cop getting out the car saying, hold on, putting on his Klan outfit, then saying, I'm killing you because you're black, and then taking you to the courthouse and turning himself in. Other than that, I'm not sure what the factual circumstance will have to be for a murder charge against a cop to stick for a black man.
Well, and even then, there would still be a question. Now, what did you do? Everybody, let us look and watch very closely these arguments that will be put forth by the defense and by the prosecution. You need to see it all. Don't let people interpret this for you. You need to interpret this for yourself. The whole world is watching. Our republic, really? Yes, yes, yes. Even our whole way of life, really. A lot is riding on this, I do believe. Um, a lot, a lot. My apologies. We tried to get Mr. Bryant today. We're going to try and get him tomorrow. He has been very busy marching for his brother. I spoke with him several times yesterday, and every time I spoke with him throughout the afternoon, he was marching for his brother. So please give love and prayers to that beautiful family. And can't wait to be with you tomorrow on the Santita Jackson Show so we can review all of this and see where we're going. Who knows? We might even have a verdict tomorrow. I don't know. More of the Santita Jackson Show, everybody. God bless you. Let's change the world and make it all that it's supposed to be, the beloved community. I'm Santita Jackson. Be with you tomorrow, God willing. WCPT and AM 950 Radio. My dear, dear friends, how are you today? Thank you so much for being such a brilliant panel.
Thank you, Santita, for the opportunity. I have to tell you, everybody's on pins and needles. I mean, this is just as, all your guests have said, this is a time of reckoning for this country. It's not that anyone's expecting massive change, let's be clear, because again, our whole lives we've seen this. But, when mainstream America, the world, everybody's watching and weighing in, the dynamic is certainly different. And with black and brown and white people marching for the same thing, the dynamic, and mass throughout the country and the world, things do look a little different because external pressures is what toppled the apartheid regime, led by your dad and others. And so external pressure is also present here. External meaning outside of the state of Minnesota, from other states throughout the country, and other countries in the world as well. So I do think there is a dynamic that is important for us to consider. But what I think about is the George Floyd family, and our leaders in that community are, civil rights and human rights leaders, people who have been like, Reverend Moss, who have been doing this day in and day out for years, for decades, holding things together, being responsible for so many people succeeding and achieving in that community. I say prayers for them. I say prayers for all of us. I say prayers for the young black children, black boys that I'm raising, because we have to sit down no matter what the outcome is, your nephews, your nieces. We have to sit down and talk about what this means. As I send my oldest one off to college in Kansas, what does this mean, and what do you have to do? Since the message could be, you comply, you get killed. You don't comply, you get killed. You have to comply, you get killed. You just get killed. That's the message that's being sent out there. So all these things we've got to address.
Well, and they're going to have to take up their responsibility and get involved. When we were in school back in the 80s, I remember the discussion. One of friend of mine was in my room telling me why marching did not work and why she was not going to march. And because that was passe. I said, I don't think so. Because all these people come by my father's office, these big executives who can't pierce this glass ceiling, these folks who can't get these contracts, these folks who can't get the McDonald's franchise or the extra McDonald's franchise, even though theirs are very successful, and on and on and on and on. I mean, I'm not just calling out McDonald's, I'm just using that generically. But I'm just saying, this is real, everybody. And this is real for a lot of people. This is real for a lot of people. So, Spike Moss, I want to thank you for all that you do. Thank you for taking care of my daddy right now, in particular. Because he wanted a sliver of that pie, CK, yesterday. I said, okay, Pastor, just go on and give it to him. Let him.
See, what had happened was, was it the sweet potato pie or the banana pudding? I just want to know which one.
Sweet potato
was it
pie.
peach cobbler? Peach cobbler?
Honey, if it was all there, because number one, they had it there. So I knew he was going to get him some. So, yeah. How about that?
Maybe it was just one bite, Santita. It was just one bite.
No, it wasn't. Honey, it was that pie that he took back to that hotel room. And he is happy.
But I'm not going to snitch. I'm not going to snitch. Your dad ate well every time. It ain't my place. Ain't not my place to tell his business. I'm not like that to tell his business.
He is so sick of me. He is so sick of me. He hung up on me yesterday. I said, I called him back. I said, did you just hang up on me? He said, oh, no. A mouthful of food. Love you, baby. Love you, baby. Daddy loves baby. Bye. Click. I said, oh, okay.
He had everything he loved yesterday.
I know y'all gonna
and he did well in the church too. He did well in the church too.
Seeing everybody was exciting, and so just you go on and take care of him, because I know you're going to be with Jonathan today too, and so that is wonderful.
Yeah, he's supposed to call me. He was on the ground. I told him, whatever you need, I got him.
Well, call him, because people start calling him, and that becomes a whole different story. But make sure you call him, because I know. Please, Jonathan introduced us. So thank you. He said, if you want to know what's going on the ground, you need to talk to him. How about that? So I'm very excited. And this will all be great. No matter what, I think that we are moving toward healing. And I got to call Gary Hines today to thank him, because this music is so appropriate for what we're dealing with right now. And so I feel so blessed. And I can't wait to get up there and see all of you. You see, my father left
When are
me
you
behind.
coming?
Well, you see, my father left me behind. So there we go. I could have done
When
my
you
show.
think you coming?
I don't know. I mean, look, I could have come because I could have done my show from up there. How about that? Nobody was
Well,
thinking
you know
about
what?
me.
I wish your people would sponsor a show where you could actually interview young people, mothers, fathers. Matter of fact, I got she's either 13 or 14-year-old child. She's been talking the way she talks about 8 or 9.
Well, let's talk about
And one of these shows, I'm going to talk to you and put her on there where you can actually hear her feeling about this issue. A little girl.
Well, would you do me a
blow your
favor?
mind here.
Help me to pull some young people together who can talk about this in the next couple of days with their parents' permission, of course.
Of course.
Okay.
I'll do that for you.
Would you do that?
When you hear her, you're going to get blown away.
I want to hear what they've got to say because, I mean, when I think about Darnella Frazier, when I think of when I think of the young man who was working at Cup Foods.
Santita, I've got to run.
I love
I've got a
you,
call
CK.
coming in. I hate to interrupt.
I'll
So
call you
I love you too. I'll talk to you soon.
Absolutely.
Okay.
I
Bye-bye.
want to get some young people to talk about this because we know how we
Yeah,
feel. But
because their feelings of what they see is important.
Well, I want to. If you can help me to find some of these young people, please do. I'd like to speak.
How many of them you want on at one time?
I'd like to have about 3.
About 3.
Mm-hmm.
All right, I'll look for 3 of them for you.
Yeah.
And I know I'm going to have her. There's no question.
Well, you know what? Let me have 2.
Have
let me have 2 and 2 because I'd like to have. I'd like to have a conversation with them, and maybe you and a CK and Dwight. I think it would be a great thing. But I want to hear them because I want to have some rolling panels of young people to talk about this. Just not only to.
I got a young man who just turned 28. He's running for city council.
Well, let's bring them on. Bring them on. I want them on. I want them on the show because I want the show to I want it to really impact the Minneapolis-St. Paul community. On the day that I am long gone, somebody ought to be sitting in this seat telling the story.
Mm-hmm.
That's what I want.
Oh, I got you. I'll take care of that. You try to let me know. Give me a heads up either tonight or tomorrow so I'll know exactly what day.
It can be this week. Just let me know. I'll work them in. I will work them in.
Okay.
And I'll talk with you.
You have an idea so I'll know what day exactly?
Let's say Wednesday.
All right.
Wednesday, Thursday. Wednesday and Thursday.
All right.
So I'm trying to get some other young people. And I want to talk to you because I need to look for sponsors up there too.
Okay. What kind of sponsor are you talking about?
Well, we'll talk offline.
Middle road or big ones?
Well, all. But we'll talk offline. I'm on Facebook now. So see everybody.
I
gotta pay for my show. Here we go. But I love you all. But I'll call you back. But I love everybody. Right. Dwight, I love you. Robert Patillo, I love you. Spike Moss, I love you. CK in absentia, who's already she hasn't been absent, but she had to leave. I love you. Devin, I love you. Thank you for a great show. Everybody, love you. See you tomorrow. Let's check out this trial. Let's check out these arguments. It's important for you to know. You need to hear for yourself. Love you, everybody.
All right.
Okay.
Take care.
Thank you. Bye-bye.